Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today doing some Blader Dragonmaid test hands. So I'm really excited to do this for you guys because this deck was actually suggested to me by one of my patrons, Jin. And this deck is an extremely interesting deck that combines the ultimate Dragon Destroyer Swordsman with Dragon Maids, and surprisingly enough, it works extremely well. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can become part of Notification Squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like in your name description every single video, getting assigned cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month you're a patron, along with test hands. And definitely give Jin some love down in the comments down below for suggesting such an awesome deck. So let's get straight on into this one, guys. So this deck is a really interesting deck. It's combined some really interesting engines to make a crazy powerful deck that works extremely well. We're using the Dragonmaid engine to make some extremely powerful dragons on our side of the field, the Buster Blader engine to lock down our opponent's field, and extra deck, which is just really amazing, and a branded engine in this deck, which is just super cool and works extremely well with the other two engines. But thank goodness we finally figured out who owns the mansion that the Dragon Maids live in. And it's actually Buster Blader, but hey, that's just a theory. A Yu-Gi-Oh theory. So we're gonna go ahead and pile shuffle up the deck, guys, and see what we can do for our first test hand, because this deck is super fun to be able to play. It's just absolutely amazing how well it works together with all three of those different engines running around in this deck, because you have some really insane one card combos that this deck can pull off. So we're gonna go ahead and pile shuffle the deck, because you guys know that's dad rule number one. But now that we got the deck pile shuffle, we're gonna go ahead and give it a quick shuffle and see what we can do for our first test hand, because this deck is super fun to be able to play and you can just get into some amazing combos. So let's go ahead and see what we can do for our first test hand. So we're going to go ahead and draw into a copy of Branded Fusion. That's a really good first card to be able to go in for some crazy powerful plays. A copy of Prologue. Prologue is insanely good in this deck and is a one card combo for the entire Buster Blader line. A copy of Dragonmaid Tinarch, a copy of Dragonmaid Tidying, and finally a copy of Dragonmaid Parlor. This is a really good hand right off the bat. This is probably one of the best hands that you can get, because you have both of your Dragonmaid monsters to go in for the Dragonmaid Fusion monster. You have the two cards that start your branded fusion or your branded line and your Buster Blader line, and you have a bounce with your copy of your Dragonmaid Tidying. So you have some really good plays in this particular line. So let's go ahead and start off by normal summoning out our Dragonmaid Parlor, which is the best card that we can normal summon and the only card we can normal summon in this particular line. So what we're going to go ahead and do is send Dragonmaid Changeover from our deck to the graveyard. And that's very important to send that card from our deck to the graveyard, because then we can use its ability to be able to bounce our copy of Parlor back to our hand and add this card to our hand as well, which is really interesting that you can basically just bounce it and then grab it, where you have basically 6 searchers for the fusion spell, because Parlor sends it to grave and then it can grab it back by bouncing the Parlor that you normal summon, or Chamber just grabs it directly to the hand. So what I'm going to do is immediately activate the copy of Dragonmaid Changeover to be able to send our copy of Tinarch and our copy of our Parlor from our hand to the graveyard to summon out our Dragonmaid boss monster, which is just really good because this card is actually a walking negate and also a Monster Rebornish card, which is kind of neat. And then we're going to activate our copy of Branded Fusion. And once we activate Branded Fusion, you can send from your deck to the graveyard your copy of the Dragon Buster Destruction Swordsman and a copy of our Fallen of Albaz from our deck to the graveyard, which we're actually going to leave the copy of the Dragon Buster in the graveyard, which is really nice, because we're going to go in for our copy of Lubellion. Now this is best combo in the entire deck, is to go for your copy of Lubellion, because you're going to set up the graveyard with that copy of your Dragon Buster, which is really cool, because you can actually lock down the opponent with this combo. So at this point we're going to use the ability to discard to the graveyard our copy of Dragonmaid Tidying, which is very important to discard that card because we want to keep our copy of Prologue in the hand. Now at this point we're going to go ahead and use Lubellion's effect comboed with our copy of Fallen of Albaz to shuffle both of these back into the extra deck and into the deck, to then be able to go in for a copy of Mirror Jade. Now Mirror Jade is really insane to be able to summon to your side of the field, because once you get that copy of Mirror Jade on the field, you're going to be able to banish a card on the field, which is really, really nice. At this point, go ahead and set to your side of the field that copy of your prologue, because at this point, we're going to go ahead and lock down the opponent's monsters and extra deck during the next turn. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and pass over to the opponent, and the effect of our copy of our Dragonmaid boss monster goes off, which has the ability that during the standby phase, you can special summon out a level 9 or lower Dragonmaid monster from your hand or graveyard, which is an extremely powerful effect to be able to bring back to our side of the field, either Parlor or a copy of Tenarch, which is really, really cool. But we're going to have to use one of them as a fusion material to go in for our Buster Blader, because we don't want to use our copy of our Dragon Buster. So you kind of got to pick which one that you want to go for, either the copy of Tenarch or set up the graveyard with a copy of Parlor to get its effect to go off again. Usually I like to go for the copy of Tenarch because it's going to give me another 2700 attack point monster to help me go in for game, but it's totally up to you which one you want to go for. But I'm going to go ahead and summon out the copy of Tenarch to be able to set up for more plays, because we already do have a way to bring it back with the Dragonmaid Tidying. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and flip up the copy of the prologue of the Destruction Swordsman, which is going to let us send from our deck to the graveyard the Destruction Sword Memories, along with a copy of Buster Blader, which is really cool to be able to just send those cards directly from the deck to the grave, which he was right on the top, go figure. We're going to go ahead and shuffle up the deck because we're not going to be going back in during the rest of this turn, I don't believe. We're going to go ahead and shuffle those in. So at this point, we're going to get to special summon out a copy of our Buster Dragon to our side of the field, which is really good because now it's turning everything on our opponent's side of the field into a dragon monster, which is really cool. And then at this point, once this resolves, you can't actually chain the copy of the Destruction Sword Memories, because it will cause the prologue to actually fizzle because it no longer has the cards that it's sent to the graveyard. In the graveyard, we're going to go ahead and activate, after it resolves, the copy of Destruction Sword Memories, which is going to banish a copy of Buster Blader and any dragon from the graveyard, which I'm going to actually banish Parlor Dragonmaid to be able to banish both of these because it's a dragon and a non-dragon Buster Blader. Then we're going to summon out from our extra deck the copy of the Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman. Now that we're not even done at that point, because we had the effect of our Buster Dragon to be able to equip a copy of our Dragon Buster to be able to lock down the opponent out of their extra deck. So this is pretty much full combo of what the deck can do, making some really powerful dragons on our side of the field, which is just really, really cool. This is a negate. This is actually locking down the opponent, where everything that's a dragon has its effects negated, and it's changed to defense position, which is really cool. This is making everything a dragon, and your copy of Mirror Jade can banish a card, and your copy of Tenarch is a 2700 attack point monster, which is really cool because it's actually my favorite of the Dragonmaid forms, which definitely comment down below which one of the Dragonmaids is actually your favorite. Mine is personally Chamber Dragonmaid, but the dragon form that's my favorite is actually Kitchen's, which is Tenarch, which is really cool. So that sets up pretty much your entire board to lock the opponent out of the extra deck, give you at least a negate, a copy of the Buster Bladers locking down the field. This is stopping them from going for the extra deck, and this is a banish. This is turning everything into a dragon. So you have some really insane plays. So let's go ahead and draw into our next turn and just see what we get. It doesn't really matter at this point what we get, but we're actually going to draw into a copy of Luber, which this is actually going to go to the grave at the end of the turn, but we don't even have a place to normal summon, which is totally fine because we can just basically go in for game at this point. If you did have a way that you could actually summon a monster to another zone, like summoning this up here, you could normal summon out the copy of a Luber, but that doesn't even really matter because at this point you have so much card advantage that you're probably going to win at this point. But this was really cool that even if they board wiped you, you could just normal summon out the copy of a Luber, get another copy of Branded Fusion, and then go in for Albion and Dragoon to be able to just go in for game at that point with those two really powerful fusion monsters with this board already gone, which is kind of neat about this deck. And you also have in the graveyard your copy of Tidying that you can banish to bring back a copy of Tenarch to give you an extra advantage to be able to go in for game, which is just really, really nice. And you also have the copy of Changeover that can bounce your copy of Tenarch back to hand to be able to grab that card back to hand, which then you can use as a fusion spell to be able to get rid of the Buster Dragon during main 2 if you didn't go in for game to summon out another copy of Shio or a copy of the Chamber or a copy of the Dragonmaid House, which is really a great card. So you have some really interesting plays that you can actually pull off in this deck that you can just go in for game in so many different ways. So Let's go ahead and go into the next test hand and see what we can do. That was pretty much full combo and maximum potential of this particular deck to set up those fields. It's really insane what this deck can do. And if you guys would like to check out the deck profile for this deck, as always, it is down in the description down below, which is just really, really cool for this deck. This deck is super fun to be able to play. I really love the way that it plays, how it's so easy to combo off in this deck, and it's just such a fun deck. So let's go ahead and see what we can do for the next one. So we're going to go ahead and draw into a copy of Branded Fusion, another copy of Branded Fusion, and it's only a once per turn, so it doesn't matter. A copy of Branded Opening, they really want us to play into that. A copy of Chamber, and a copy of Fallen of Albaz. So we actually got my favorite of the Dragon Maids, which is really cool. So let's go ahead and see what we can do with this particular hand. So you can actually bait out the opponent with this hand, because you have the copy of the Branded Opening in your hand, or if you're going second, you do have the copy of the Fallen of Albaz that can deal with your opponent's field, which is really, really nice because it's pretty much super poly on legs. So what we're going to do is go ahead and activate the copy of Branded Opening to bait out the opponent, and what we're going to do is discard a copy of Branded Fusion because we don't really need both copies in our hand. So we're actually going to special summon out from the deck a copy of Aluber onto our side of the field, which is going to give us a search of another branded card, which I'm just going to grab another copy of Branded Fusion. You can't play Branded in red, but I'm not playing because the deck is already extremely tight to be able to put that card in, but you totally can if you can find room. But we're going to go ahead and shuffle up the deck and see what we can do for the rest of our hand, because now they're not going to know that we have a second copy of Branded Fusion in the hand because you actually searched it and we have it already in the hand. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and normal summon out the copy of Chamber, and Chamber is going to give us some really good advantage because we're actually going to get to search a copy of Tidying, which Tidying lets us target a dragon monster that you control and a card that your opponent controls and you or in their graveyard, and return them to the hand. And it's also a monster reborn when it's in the graveyard because you can banish it, which is really cool. So at this point, I'm just going to set it onto my side of the field and activate the copy of Branded Fusion. Now, this one, I'm actually going to go a different way this time. We're actually going to go for our copy of Albion, which is really cool. We actually have two different targets for Albion that you can summon out when you summon it to your side of the field. So we're just going to summon that to our side of the field by sending to the graveyard our copy of our Light Hex Seal Fusion and our copy of Fallen of Albaz that we have in the deck. I like to keep the other one in the hand because I don't want to get rid of it too soon. So we're going to go ahead and shuffle up the deck. And once we shuffle up the deck, we're going to go ahead and send those to graveyard. And once we do send those to graveyard, you have two different options that you can actually use its effect for. So we're going to go ahead and banish these two from the graveyard. Now, the really interesting thing is you don't have to go for Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. You actually can go for another card, which is super nostalgic to be able to do. But you can actually go for either one of these, which is kind of cool, or even you can go for the Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman. You'll be looking at these three and going, wait a minute, that requires Dark Magician, that requires Blue Eyes, and that requires Buster Blader. Yeah, that's super nostalgic, but this requires just a Buster Blader plus a dragon monster, which is our fusion substitute monster, plus a Fallen of Albaz, which is a dragon. This requires a Blue Eyes White Dragon plus a dragon monster, which is our fusion substitute plus a dragon. And then this requires a Dark Magician plus a dark dragon monster, so you can use our fusion substitute monster and a Fallen of Albaz, which is a dragon monster. So you can pick between all three of these monsters, between which one you actually want to summon to your field, depending on what your matchup is. If you feel like you can OTK, summon out the copy of Blue Eyes Tyrant Dragon, which is really cool because it can attack multiple times, which is really cool. You can summon out the copy of Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, which is a walking negate, which is really nice. You can summon out the copy of the Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman, if you already have set up your copy of your prologue to be able to summon out your Buster Dragon. But since we don't, we're not summoning that. And since you don't have a way to attack on the first turn, we're not summoning this. So we're actually going to summon out our copy of Dragoon because it's just the best option during our first turn. Now, next turn, I probably will go for the copy of the Blue Eyes Tyrant Burst to be able to go, or Tyrant Dragon to be able to go in for game, which is really, really cool. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and pass over to the opponent, let them do whatever they need to do. And we do have a bounce and we have a negate if we need to use it, but you have the copy of Dragonmaid Tidying to be able to bounce your copy of Chamber Dragonmaid back to your hand, which is really cool just to be able to bounce that card back to hand to use it later. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and draw and do another copy of Tidying. And at this point, you can go ahead and use the copy of Branded Fusion to be able to fusion summon into another card, which we're actually going to use again, the copy of our Fallen of Albaz and a copy of From the Deck. a copy of another card that is a light monster, because I'm actually going to go in for another copy of Lubellion. So we're just going to send our copy of our Buster Whelp from our deck to the graveyard, which is going to be helpful in the graveyard because this card has the ability that if this card's in the grave and you control a Buster Blader, then you can discard a Destruction Sword card and special summon this card, which doesn't help all that much, but it gets us an additional monster if you need it. So at this point, I'm going to summon out an additional copy of Albion to my side of the field because we do play 2. And at this point, we're going to go ahead and banish from the graveyard our copy of our... Actually, it might be better to go for Lubellion at this point. So let's go for Lubellion instead of the Albion, because we can actually go in for more plays with the copy of Lubellion, because we're going to shuffle back those cards. So we can actually set up the graveyard with our Dragon Buster. So you can actually go in for more plays that way if you want to go for a different play. So let's go ahead and put that back in the extra deck. We're not going to go for the copy of Albion. We're actually going to go for our copy of Lubellion, because we do have the Dragonmaid Tiding that we can discard. So we're going to go ahead and send these to grave. And once we do, we're going to discard the copy of Tidying to the grave. And once we do, we can shuffle back into the extra deck our copy of our Lubellion and shuffle back into the deck a Fallen of Albaz, and that will get us a Mirror Jade on our side of the field, which is really good just to get that on our side of the field so we can go in for more plays by the effect of our Lubellion, which is really good just to get that card on the side of the field paired with the Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. Now at this point, you can go ahead and normal summon out your copy of Chamber. Chamber will go off and actually search from the deck a copy of our Dragonmaid Changeover, which is going to help us out because we're actually going to fusion summon into a copy of our Dragonmaid boss monster. So we're going to use Changeover, and since our copy of Albion actually is a dragon monster, it is a level 5 or higher dragon monster, you can actually go in for that card, which is really, really cool to be able to use, which is just really, really nice. And during the end phase, your Albion will go off, setting a branded spell or trap directly from your deck to your side of the field, or adding it to your hand if you have any left, which is not probably going to happen because we can just switch our copy of Aluber into attack position and go in for game with these cards, which is really nice to be able to just go in for game with all these really big power plays that we have. But something interesting that you can actually do is you can actually use the effect of Dragonmaid Tiding to banish it from the graveyard, special summon back to your side of the field Chamber, and then use the effect of your Changeover to be able to bounce it back to hand with your copy of Changeover, which makes your copy of Red Eyes Dark Dragoon live again, which is really, really cool to be able to bounce that card back to your hand to make this live, to give you that negate on your turn to help you go in for game. So let's go ahead and do one more test stand and see what we can do for one more, because as you guys can see, this deck is really powerful. It's really fun. It's really amazing how well the Dragonmaids work with Buster Blader, because you're basically just focusing around going in for those really simple plays with Buster Blader, like setting Prologue to your side of the field. And the Dragonmaids are just basically setting up for that along with your branded cards, which is really, really cool about this deck. I really like this deck. It's super fun to be able to play. So let's go ahead and see what we can do for one more test stand and see what we can pull off for our last one. So we're going to go ahead and give the deck a quick little shuffle and see what we can do for our last test hand, because this deck is just really, really good. So we're going to go ahead and draw into a copy of Destruction Sword Memories, a Chamber Dragonmaid. That's a pretty good normal summon. We don't want to see the Destruction Sword in our hand. A copy of Tidying, we can already get a bounce and we can get a search. A copy of Parlor, that's not too bad. And finally, Trap Trick, which is not bad at all. We don't have the branded package in this particular hand, but that's totally fine. You have plenty of plays that you can go for with this hand. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to normal summon out our copy of Chamber to our side of the field and use her effect to be able to search from the deck our copy of Changeover, which is really, really good to be able to grab that copy of Changeover so that we can go in for a fusion play later on. You can go in directly for House if you want to go in for your copy of House. You don't really need to, but we're going to go ahead and just put it on our side of the field, or put this card in our hand for later, because we have the copy of Tiding that we can set to the field so we can get some more plays. But at this point, we're going to go ahead and set our copy of Tiding and our copy of Trap Trick, and we're going to pass over to the opponent with 3 cards in hand. Once we pass over to the opponent, you can go ahead and flip on your side of the field the copy of Tiding if you want to bounce something, or leave that face down and activate Trap Trick to be able to set to our side of the field and banish a copy of our Prologue, which is going to be really good to be able to set up for our Buster Blader. Now, once you go ahead and get that card on the field, you can go in on the previous turn if you want to for that copy of House, because it will set up for your play. So let's go back up a little bit and let's go ahead and use the effect of our changeover, because it's going to help us set up the graveyard a little bit for our other cards. And plus it's going to give us a 3k monster on our field, because we're actually going to get our copy of our House Dragonmaid on our side of the field. So we're actually going to make that before we pass. Now we pass over the opponent and use the effect of our Trap Trick to be able to banish our copy of our Prologue during our opponent's standby phase, and go ahead and set to our side of the field our copy of Prologue face down. So once we go ahead and set that face down, you can activate one more trap for the rest of the turn, and we're going to go ahead and flip up the copy of Prologue to be able to use its effect, to be able to send from our deck to the graveyard a copy of Destruction Sword Memories, and a copy of a Buster Blader to be able to go ahead and summon out to our side of the field Buster Dragon, which is going to give us some really good plays to be able to go in for our Buster Blader lock, for basically giving our opponent a one-sided skill drain, which is really, really cool. So once we go ahead and get those into the graveyard, we're going to get to summon out a copy of Buster Dragon to our side of the field, which is really good just to get that card on the field. And once it resolves, you can go ahead and use the effect of our copy of Destruction Sword Memories to banish that from the graveyard, and a copy of either Parlor or Chamber from the grave to be able to set up those plays, which is really, really good to set up the play to summon out your copy of the Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman. And that's actually why I went ahead and summoned out House, is because you want to get in the graveyard your copy of Chamber so that you can use it with your Destruction Sword Memories, which is why I took a step back and went ahead and went in for the copy of House, because it gives me a 3k monster on the field while also using that effect. And also has the ability during the standby phase, you can target one of their Dragonmaid monster that you control and special summon out a Dragon monster that is from your hand or graveyard in defense position, whose level is one level higher or lower, which we didn't have a dragon on the field, so we couldn't use the effect. So at this point, we're going to let the opponent go ahead and do what they want to do, but we're already locking them down, which is really nice. We unfortunately don't have in the graveyard the Buster Dragon, so we can't lock them out of the extract, but we do have more plays that we can go in for once we draw. So let's go ahead and give the deck a quick little shuffle and see what we can draw into for our next draw. So we're going to go ahead and draw, and we're going to draw into a copy of the Light Hex Seal Fusion, which isn't going to help us out all that much, but it has the ability that you can substitute any one fusion material for this card and only one material for that card, which is really cool. And you can tribute this fusion materials from your side of the field, including a face-up card, to special summon out one corresponding light fusion monster from your extra deck, which is kind of neat to be able to go in for, because you could feasibly use it to go in for your copy of Fallen Volbaz if you had a light monster that you were willing to give up, like your copy of your House Dragonmaid. But I'm not really worried about it all that much with the field that we have set up, because you have such a really good field already to help you go in for games. So I think that's going to pretty much show how well the deck works. You can use the copy of Tidying if you want to, but you really don't need it to be able to go in for all those other plays to bounce your cards, because you already have such a good setup. So I think that's going to do it for this one, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Definitely tell me what you think of this deck down in the comments down below. And thank you so much, Jen, for actually working with me to build this deck. It was really a lot of fun for us to come together and build this deck together, because it's just such a fun deck, and really amazing that you take the ultimate Dragon Destroyer Swordsman and Dragon Maids and mix them together to make this really cool deck. And it's super fun to be able to do, especially with how many decks that you can actually mix Buster Blader with. And it's just such a cool deck. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.